President Trump paints the nation's capital as a city beset by crime, declaring an emergency and calling in National Guard troops under those emergency powers. D.C. leaders contend there is no crisis, pointing to crime rates trending down, now at a 30-year low.
The Department of Justice is now probing whether officers inside the Metropolitan Police Department manipulated crime data. Not a rumor, not speculation, an active federal level probe.
A draft Justice Department investigation accusing the D.C. Police Department of sharing unreliable or inaccurate crime stats, all in an effort to make violent crime appear lower than what was actually happening on the ground in real life.
And here's what matters. If violent crimes were downgraded, if assaults became disputes, and if robberies became lost property.
Well, now another investigation, this time from Congress, specifically the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. It's making similar claims that the chief of police here in D.C. was trying to make it seem like, on paper, crime was lower in the nation's capital than it actually was.
Then the entire public safety picture of Washington, D.C. may have been built on distorted data.
The report is labeled Leadership Breakdown, How D.C.'s Police Chief Undermined Crime Data Accuracy. It specifically highlights a story from News 4's Paul Wagner, who reported in August about allegations of crime data manipulation. The report is based on interviews with D.C. police commanders who claim there are pressures on personnel to lower the classifications of crimes to create the impression that crime is low.
And if that's true, then policy decisions, police deployments, and even federal funding are all based on a version of reality that may not even exist.
At issue, the suspensions of 13 senior MPD officials accused in an alleged scheme to alter crime statistics in the city, to make the streets seem safer than they were and are. Who ultimately ordered the crime stat revisions remains a mystery. Reaction now from D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and the president of the D.C. Police Union.
At some point, I guess MPD will talk about the categories of crime that experience changes. And what is going to be really key and I suspect it's in all of these recommendations for termination, is if this is deliberate, if it is meant to make the official look good and not show what's actually happening, there are repercussions for that.
We've been here for 6 years now. We've been short 800 police officers, and we've been told repeatedly, well, crime is down. Well, crime is down. You don't need to fix that gap. But crime has not been down. Not at all. And these 35 and 40% drops in crime categories that they've been reporting, we're now learning have been a lie.
This is the Hill of Justice.
I'm Jerome Hill, former state investigator and police officer, and with me is Clayton County's own former sheriff, Victor Hill. And there's one red flag in this case that nobody is explaining yet. Was this a mistake or is it a system? Because if it's a system, this isn't a paperwork issue anymore. This is a structural failure. And before this is over, we're going to go ahead and break down exactly what something like this happens, how it happens, who benefits, and how investigators actually prove it. So what just changed? Here's what we know right now. The United States Department of Justice is actively reviewing allegations that crime data in D.C. may have been altered through misclassification. That means crimes weren't necessarily erased. They were just relabeled. And now here comes the big pause, because that's the first psychological misdirection. Most people think crime manipulation means deleting reports. That's not how it actually works. It's quieter than that. It's cleaner than that too, and harder to prove. Instead of removing crimes, you downgrade them. That's it. And aggravated assault becomes simple assaults. Robbery becomes theft. Gun-related incidents become unknown circumstances. Same event, just different categories and different statistical impacts. But here's the question nobody's asking yet. Who makes that call? And that's what I'm going to pose to you. Who makes that call?
Well, I can tell you, it comes from the top, and it usually comes from the chief or the higher ups or somebody right under the chief. And let me tell you why. Every year, there's an old saying about police chiefs that a sheriff runs for office every 4 years. A police chief runs for office every county council meeting or every city council meeting, because a lot of chiefs are 1 or 2 votes away from losing their job. And anytime there's a change at the mayor or council or something like that, and that's why most police chiefs have a 2 to 4 year life expectancy. It's rare you see chiefs go beyond that, because as the politics change, they change. But they want to prove that they're effective and that they're actually doing something. And they need to be able to take to their mayor or a new incoming mayor, hey, see, look, we're reducing crime. So when those numbers aren't what they want them to be, they come up with a lot of creative ways to fudge the number. Now, you're on point with that. Now, this is not speculation. I've seen this. I used to work for the county police.
Too.
And I've seen this. I've seen supervisors come on scene, and you're working a burglary, and they'll come look around. Go ahead and write that up as criminal trespass or whatever. So now you put in false data, because that way they know that we got a burglary ring running around, but they don't want those numbers to reflect it. So they change how it's put in there. Then they take these numbers and they report it to the FBI, and they're essentially giving false information to the FBI. But let me tell you this, where it gets real funny. Not only do they do that, let me tell you what else they do. They play these, there's a name for it when you're talking and you're not saying nothing, but you're pontificating. And then, and I forgot the name, it's double speak, I believe, but I think there's another word for it. But it's amazing the games that they play with numbers. Let me give you some examples. Okay, let's say that the crime rate is higher. Let's say your murder rate went up this year, but your car theft and your burglaries went down, if they went down at all, because they probably fudged those numbers how you describe. Well, then I've seen chiefs go, well, when we average the numbers, the overall crime numbers from last year is lower than this year. So they average everything all together. And then they're like, well, property crimes are down. If you average all over, it's down. I think it was a former mayor at Tampa that I was very proud of, because I think that, I can't remember that mayor's name, but that mayor actually told the police chief, listen, with all these people getting shot, you can't expect me to go out here and tell these folks crime is down because the burglaries and the simple thefts are down, but yet we're getting folks shot every day. We're going to have to do something different. And it forced them to come up with some techniques that was really effective during that time period. Politics came in and they switched from doing that, but it was some good things they were doing that I actually implemented here in Clayton County. But those are the type of games that they play. There was one chief, and I actually know this woman, and she was a chief in North Carolina, and she did something interesting I've never heard of. She said, yeah, the crime rate is going up, but if you average the crime from 2021 to 2020 such and such, it's overall is down. Now, I was like, what did she just say? Yeah, there's been a spike in crime, but if we average the whole time I've been here, and I guess you subtract and then you add and then you subtract again and you do some weird thing with numbers. Listen, it's simple. The crime is either going up or it's going down. It's either going up or it's going down. There's either more murders this year than it was last year, or it's less murders last year than it is this year. And then sometimes, if there is a legitimate drop in crime, it's nothing that they really did. Sometimes you have situations where there's so much killing going on that, we've done studies, not we, but studies have been done that the violent crime is done by about 10% of the criminals. And if you can verify who these people are and find a way to get them off the streets, that type of crime goes by. But sometimes you might have a year where there's a little drop because they've already killed each other. A lot of your shooters got shot by the other shooters, and if they're doing their job, and put them in jail. And it's not nothing that the cops have actually done that was an actual strategy. They just lucked up. One year in Clayton County, the crime rate went up to an all-time high. It was actually the year after I left, it went to an all-time high. And then the next year, they're like, we reduced the crime. Well, when it goes to an all-time crime, the county's been here since 1869. It's no surprise if it's a little lower next year. It don't mean you actually did anything.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So all these type of games are played.
Right. And they are. And so let's go ahead and take everybody inside how it works from a law enforcement perspective.
Mhm.
Every reported incident goes through a classification process. We know this very well. That process is guided by systems like the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation's Uniform Crime Report. We call it UCR. Okay. And in this program, here's the keys that we look at. These classifications are not always black and white. I need to tell people that. That's true. And it involves officers' discretion, something that you just pointed out. And that's where things get dangerous because discretion can be influenced by a number of things, whether it be training, supervision, department culture, performance pressure. And these are some of the things that you were talking about. We are at patterns across departments historically when multiple incidents are downgraded in similar ways. We don't assume the coincidence. We infer these pattern behaviors. And that's the inductive reasoning that we see. And we see these red flags all the time. If investigators are seeing clusters of similar downgrades, that suggests something bigger than just the individual judgment. It suggests that there's some type of direction talking about is coming from the top. And that leads to the next question. Was anyone telling officers how to classify crimes? And you alluded to that a little bit.
They are and they were.
Right.
I've seen it. You've seen it.
Right.
It's a culture thing. Let me tell you something. DC is just the tip of the iceberg.
That's it.
Once
I agree.
There, they probably got to go to 85% of the agencies in this country, unless it's a place where it's not an issue. There are places where there's not a lot going on. It's not whatever. But any place where crime is an issue, and every year they know there's going to be a report in the mirror that's going to have to say, oh, wow, crime's going up under my watch. I've got to prove I did something about crime, or the police chief is trying to keep his job or trying to get a raise. That's when you get all of this stuff going on here. And in any city that has that type of political pressure, crime is going to be an issue. And then they're going to say, well, actually, we did reduce the crime. And, I remember I've seen that game played in Clayton County a lot. And you have to give people not just some numbers, but you got to give them a relief from crime that they can feel and actually see. I mean, if every time you look on the news, you're seeing a shooting in the county, but yet they're saying, well, actually crime is down. If in your neighborhood you're constantly hearing shots fired and the police coming in, that's kind of hard to believe. Where's it down at? On the other side of the county? Because it's not down here. You have to actually give people results that they can see and feel. That way they can believe the numbers, because folks now in government lie so bad, it's hard to believe anything that a lot of these mayors and chiefs tell you now, because they're trying to keep their job and prove they're doing a good job. I tell you, the other lunacy that's going on in law enforcement right now is that people actually believe that they can reduce crime by community policing. Community policing has its place. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think that we have gotten away from what community policing is really supposed to be. I think community policing, probably the best example I've ever seen in it. There's a movie. It's called Murder in I think it's Meriwether County, I believe. And there was a murder there, and the sheriff met with the community on the front step of the courthouse, and it's like, hey, we can't have this here. I need your help. And they actually help him search and get done. That's what you call community policing. But getting on TV and crying and doing dancing videos and acting like you're a still mannequin, or trying to show how hip you are by saying, hey, twin, on social media or whatever. I have not seen any proof that reduces violence and crime. I don't know of any killers or thugs that when they see that, they say, you know what? These guys are cool. I think I'm going to stop robbing and raping and killing. There's only one way to deal with those particular type of folks. I actually saw another chief, and he made the statement when he took over a major agency, and he was over another major agency, and he was talking about the crime. He said, we've got to do more community policing. When I was chief before, I would actually go to McDonald's, and I would go in the drive-through window, and I would work it and I would hand people their food, and people would come and say, Chief, you're here doing this. And I was like, yeah. And I was trying to figure out how exactly did that lower the crime rate? Did you give out free burgers and say, listen, you don't have to rob anyone today. You can eat here for free. I don't get it's not even logical.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way you're going to tell me a guy that sells drugs, a guy that robs and kills people, went through the drive-through and saw him and say, you know what? I saw the chief handing out Big Macs a day. I think I'm going to stop selling drugs. It doesn't even make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think what people need to understand is the best way to build relations with the community is to do your job and do it well and be fair.
Yeah, reports indicate that there are over 150 questionable classifications under review right now. Now, we got to stop because 150 is not random. That number incredibly matters. And if one or two incidents are misclassified, we can go ahead and say that's an error. But if dozens follow the same pattern, that's a behavior. And if over 100 show alignment, that's structure. That's the deductive reasoning you have to have when we go ahead and investigate this stuff. We move from general principle to specific conclusions. And that consistency implies intent or system influence.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, and that's where we're at. These incidents were these incidents reviewed by supervisors? Because here's what people don't understand. Nothing moves into official stats without layers of approval. It's been like that in my department, in your department. Sergeants review it, command staff reviews it, data units verify it. So if misclassification happened, it either slipped through multiple layers or those layers were part of it. And if the command level personnel are involved, this changes everything.
Command personnel is always involved because everything starts from the top. Whatever the leader is, the organization is. If the leader is schizophrenic, the organization is schizophrenic. If the leader has courage, the organization has courage. Everything is a reflection of leadership. So I've always said, I don't have to meet the sheriff. All I got to do is walk through his jail. I know who he is. I don't have to meet the police chief. All I got to do is drive through the city. If I see a bunch of graffiti, if I see a bunch of folks running up to the car, beating on the windows, if I go to stores and it's like 12 or 18 guys in front of the store, I already know who the police chief is. You know what I'm saying? So everything. And then you also got to be careful how you communicate things, because if you got a chief coming in and saying, I need these numbers now, I don't care how you do, you get me some lower numbers. Okay, that's a way of telling people, I got to get him lower numbers. And so, he may not have said fudge the numbers directly, but he said fudge the numbers.
Right. So in part, what you're talking about is certainly the political pressures that are involved, of course, the performance metrics. But this is the things that nobody ever talk about too. And I'm going to give this to you exclusively. These are how commanders advanced based on those results.
I agree.
And if you have shitty commanders, then guess what? You're going to go ahead and have what you were just talking about.
Exactly.
And those were the numbers.
And it rolls downhill. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. The culture takes on from the leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So if the leadership feels comfortable lying about numbers to the mayor and the public, then they set that culture for everybody else.
Right. Because of these incentives.
Yeah, let me tell you how bad it is. Like even here in Clayton County, 8 people have been murdered in a jail. But when you look at the murder statistics, they don't throw that in the murder statistics. It's almost as if, though, if you get killed in a jail, that doesn't count as a murder.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other games that's played too. Like you're not getting the full picture. If the county police say, well, this is how many murders we had this year. Well, actually, there's more, but they don't count it inside the incorporated city. But we don't want to count that because we're not really responsible for that. So you got all these games. So you're not getting accurate numbers. You're not getting the people inside the city that's been killed. You're not getting the people who've been killed inside the jail. If you get killed, it's a murder. It's still a crime scene. It's still inside that jurisdiction. If you got 200 stabbings in the jail, that's 200 aggravated assaults. Those numbers somehow don't make it into the grand scheme of things in the crime. It's kind of as if though the jail is a place all on its own. And if you get killed there, it's not really accounted as a murder. Who came up with that idea?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Right. And that's here. And that's getting to the uncomfortable question I'm about to ask. Did anyone explicitly say change the numbers, or was it understood without being said? And this is how we prove this. So when we do the real investigative work, and that is where most people get this wrong, you don't prove manipulation by looking at totals. You prove it by analyzing case level data. And this is what I'm talking about. We take a look at the incident comparison. The investigators got to go ahead and compare the original reports, the body cam footage, the witness statements, and the dispatch logs. And we could do that even much quicker with AI if they implement these type of matters. Reclassification patterns matter too. You got to look for the consistency downgrades, the same supervisors involved, the same units involved. So it makes a heck of a difference. And then the communication trails, which you did very well in your department with the emails, the internal messages, and the briefings. This is where cases get broken open. And if there's language like that, make sure that this doesn't go in as X, as you just explained earlier in the show. That's not interpretation. That's instruction.
Right.
That's what we got to go look at.
And it's outright, and let's call it for what it is. It's lying, it's falsifying documents, it's falsifying, and you got to set the culture that if I catch that, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
I was a very stickler. If you got caught lying, you're done. That's it. And there's a reason for that. Okay, how can we trust your testimony in court? How many people have been gone to prison for perjury, people making false statements in court? And if you're capable of doing that, then you're capable of planting evidence on somebody. Anytime someone lies through an investigation, I've had folks that we've investigated them, and they would not have gotten fired. They might have got suspended or demoted. But once they lied in that investigation, they had to go because their testimony was no longer good. And so you're lying to the public. Those numbers go ultimately to the FBI so they can do the national crime. You're lying to them. So now, and see, here's what you got to understand. I'm only as good as the information I'm given. So, there's a lot of cultures and departments where, and some bosses actually go for this, right? I don't need to know everything. Okay, yes, you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have anyone that works for you and say, well, we figure you didn't need to know that. No. What you mean I don't need to know that? I need to know everything. Because if you give me part information, I can only make a decision that will be partially effective because I don't have all of the information.
Mm-hmm.
You can lie by omission as well as commission. So I need to know everything. I need to know everything in real time so I can make the best accurate decisions possible. But if you only have so much information, then you can make a decision based on that. And it's a bad decision because you didn't have all of the information. And you will find that there will be people who will hide things from you. And that's why I had to create a notification policy. I'm going to be notified of everything in writing by email or whatever. And if I find out that I wasn't told something and you did make me aware of something, get yourself a MARTA pass and find yourself a ride home.
Right. And let's talk about the ramifications, because what laws could be involved in this? And we need to get precise with this, because this isn't just about policy. This could cross into federal law, and that's what the DOJ is looking at. The possible charges you could be looking at is false statements, obstruction of justice, fraud tied to federal funding. Nobody thinks about that. And the U.S. Attorney's Office doesn't open the doors like this lightly. And they're asking one question: was this intentional deception? And they find out, heads are going to roll for sure.
Yeah. And there's no doubt there's willful intent. Like you say, if it was one or two, okay, hey, it was an error. Okay, that's not willful intent. Let's see if we can correct that. But when you got the willful intent to make numbers look lower than they actually are, that's a problem. And ultimately, the victim is the public. Because they make decisions off of that. Okay, is this a place I can move my family? Is this a place I can open a business? And you're lying to these people, telling them that you have a situation under control that you don't have under control.
Yeah. And when I was researching this topic, I started looking at what the media was saying, okay, and the perception that we have there. Now, we address the media, but from an investigative standpoint. And when I'm looking at it this way, coverage has amplified this case for sure, right? But here's what matters. the media attention creates pressure in itself. That pressure accelerates investigations, and pressure can cause people inside departments to talk. And I'm telling you, folks, they need to watch for sudden cooperation from insiders.
And
That's usually not random.
Oh
It's
yeah,
usually strategic.
They are going to cooperate either to save themselves, or they're going to cooperate just because they don't like the command staff, or maybe they want a position. It's just sad how it is, but you'll get people to cooperate. You'll get them to cooperate whether they tell the truth or not.
Right.
Yeah.
These are all part of pattern recognitions. This isn't the first time we've seen this. Departments across the country have faced similar allegations to this. We've just talked about it. And the pattern is always the same. Statistical success, internal inconsistencies, external audit, and then the breakdown. I've seen this in my own department where we've had murders happen actually in December, and we moved them over to the new calendar year because guess what?
Right.
We don't want those numbers because they were kind of high in the previous year. We want to go ahead and put them in the new year. Well, guess what? Location and time matters.
Exactly. I've seen them fight over location. Don't die near the county line. They'll drag your body over to the other county just to say
basically
he didn't make. Yeah, exactly. That's how horrible it is. And let me tell you why this is so dangerous. Remember this. A good detective, and I think a good law enforcement period, especially a chief or a sheriff, should work just as hard to get or keep an innocent man out of jail as he works to put a guilty man in jail. Okay, so what does that mean? If you got people that don't have the integrity to give accurate numbers, that means they will do or say anything to secure an arrest warrant, to secure a search warrant, to secure a conviction. And we've seen that. I've lived it. Where people, if we don't have a case, we'll make up a case. And if we don't have the evidence, we'll lie. We'll lie to a grand jury. We'll lie to a jury or whatever like that. This old, I think I quoted it before, this old story that's kind of funny, but is actually true. And it's not funny, where a guy calls an attorney out of state and says, hey, I've been charged with this and that. And he says, okay, I'll be en route tomorrow with 5 witnesses. You can manufacture witnesses when you deal with this type of people if they're lying. You see what I'm saying? So if they think that they can manipulate numbers to make the public feel safer and feed these numbers to the National Crime Network and the FBI, what else would they lie about? And at what expense? And who all would they put in jail to make it look like they cleared a crime when actually they haven't? And the real killer is still on the loose, but they just want to show, hey, look, we got it under control.
Right. And we've seen this multiple times. And I'm here to tell everybody, across multiple cases, we observe when numbers look too clean, there's usually friction underneath.
Yes.
Where crime reductions happen faster than operational reality, and it's because crime doesn't drop nearly that easy. It fluctuates. We've talked about this. And that's when reality doesn't match data. When it doesn't do that, investigators start digging.
So let me tell you what is a real clue and how folks got caught and how nothing came out of it, but how it was obvious that folks was lying in my county and Clayton County. So let's say you're saying, hey, we had this dramatic drop in crime, but they didn't do anything last year different than they did this year. You don't see any street sweepers constantly clearing the corners. You don't see doors constantly getting kicked in for drug busts. You don't see the things you see when hey, these guys are here to clean up and they mean business and they're going to remove the gangs and the drugs from the neighborhood. They've done absolutely nothing different other than have coffee with the chief and get on social media and line dance or whatever, because that certainly didn't do it. And then all of a sudden at the end of the year, we've reduced crime. Well, what exactly did you do? And if you were making all these busts and doing all this stuff, why haven't we heard about it? Because usually anytime they do anything, they want a little bit of recognition. Hey, call the news. Hey, we caught an axe murderer today. Oh, good job. You know what I'm saying? And you're trying to tell me that all this year we saw absolutely no real enforcement. And all we saw was a bunch of antics, crying and dancing and singing and cooking hot dogs. And you're telling me that all of a sudden by this, you got a serious crime reduction? That's
Yeah.
the first clue that somebody's lying.
Yeah. And this is where we are right now. There's no final conclusion, no charges yet, but multiple indicators. We got the volume of cases, we got the pattern alignment, and we got the federal involvement right now. So is this a departmental issue or is it an isolated group? And we need to go ahead and find that, because that determines everything. Are we talking about discipline versus prosecution? Are we talking about reform versus restructuring? And are we talking about even policy versus accountability? So those are some of the things that we have to think about.
Talk about
I want
all
to
of
put
the
you on the
above.
record. Yeah, it could be all of the above.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and put you on the record on this. What do you think that DOJ does here? I have an idea what I think they're going to do.
I tell you what I hope they do.
You think charges?
If necessary, it needs to happen. Because again,
one way or another, what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. I mean, remember, there's a different DOJ with every different administration.
Yep.
So you're going to see. Right. So
Yeah.
I believe that we're going to see some action on this, and rightfully so, because again, this is an extremely dangerous situation, because that false data. Let me tell you this. Let me tell you why you really want crime statistics. Everyone's turned it into a game of, okay, well, it's lower, or no, it's higher, or whatever. What crime data is really supposed to do is to give you a constant monitoring. It's like you're constantly checking your blood pressure to make sure it's down, right? So, and it gives you an idea of where to deploy the forces. Okay, so if there's a lot of daytime burglaries, well, obviously we need more people, not just in the neighborhoods, but we need more truancy enforcement, because usually the daytime burglaries are kids cutting school. So if you see that spike, you're supposed to go into this problem-solving policing mode. Okay, this is probably what it is. Let's go deal with this there. If you're getting automobiles broken into at night in a particular area, well, we need more people working at night and working in the area where it's at. That's what it's really designed to do. But they've turned it into this big political thing. And to the point to where folks are willing to skew the numbers and lie. So I think they should make an example, and this could go, because if we get the real data and people start doing real police work, then we can really, really see a legitimate crime reduction. Because
I agree.
Anytime you see a spike in this or that, hey, there was a spike in such and such last week. Okay, let's get some folks over here. Let's do this. Let's do some tactical operations or whatever like that. But that's not going on. And as a result, the people are suffering.
Right. See, on my end and level, my question is, who benefits the most from this? That's going to lead you into what I think is going to happen in this case. And for everyone out there that's listening to it, this is going to turn into a consent decree. No doubts about it. Nobody's getting charged. It's turning into a consent decree. You have it right there. Come back and rail against me in the comments afterwards. This doesn't even rise to the level of criminal prosecution, because, well, one, we're talking about 150 cases, okay? So of all the arrests that go on, misclassifications, all the rest that goes on in D.C., only 150 that they can come out and say, hey, this should have been classified in one way or another. That nobody's getting arrested for that. That's going to be a consent decree all the way through. That's just my thought on that. In fact, I'll go ahead and bet, the next state.
And you may be right on that, but something needs to happen. It needs to be some very, very persuasive correction action on it, or it's going to continue.
Right.
But if they find cases where it's actual falsifying data, don't be surprised if somebody does get charged.
We'll see. Yeah. Let's go ahead and land this plane right now, because we talked about the accountability of this, and certainly there's always going to be another case that's already showing the same type of early pattern signs. And if it's not this type of case, there'll be another. So we'll go ahead and get into it. Once again, I want to go ahead and thank everyone for subscribing, liking, and commenting. Do you agree with my brother that there's going to be charges there? Or do you agree with me that there's going to be a consent decree given the DOJ's, track record? It doesn't matter what administration. We'll see what it looks like. But give us your comments below. Many of you on Hill Nation are standing for giving those comments, so we really appreciate it. Brother, thank you for bringing it again. And this afternoon, as we tape this, it's pretty good stuff.
All right.
All right. Talk to you soon.
This is the Hill of Justice.